English translation 251st Contact. Part 4 Friday, 3rd of February 1995, 0001 hours.
We were just talking about those who had played an important role up to that point, namely the three groups that we had discussed in one of our last conversations. In addition to these, there are a few other groups of extraterrestrial origin that fly to the Earth and can be observed here more often, but none of whom are in contact with any of the Earth humans, neither on a private nor on a military or governmental basis. Some of them come to the Earth purely for excursions or expeditions. Others have other interests, but none in the kind that the hysterical Americans portray this with the impregnation of the Earth women by Earth alien intelligences, or the impregnation of the Earth alien women by men of the Earth. The nonsense about massacring animals and so on and so forth can also be forgotten, for such things do not apply either. Those who have interests other than those that are excursion or expedition-based will make a name for themselves on the Earth in the distant future. But why this will be so, we must keep quiet about it, which of course also applies to you who are informed about these distant things of the future.
Of course, but one more question. Is it not possible that any of those you just mentioned might be responsible for the assertion made in America by this Ed Walters, who also presents photos?
He is a wheeler and dealer, and his pictures are forgeries. That is clear and unequivocal.
Well, thank you. But why were we not allowed to talk about those extraterrestrials you just talked about all these years?
On the one hand, this has to do with the new, distant future and with the new era of the Earth, about which we are not allowed to talk openly, as I explained, and on the other hand, careless information about it would only have led to further hysteria and to lies and deception, as well as to swindles and charlatanry, as was unfortunately already the case in America, Germany, England, and Japan, as well as in Sweden, etc.
Yes, I know. Especially America is raging in hysteria and madness.
That is correct. But there not only MUFON is to blame for the whole hysteria, but also the many religious sects as well as, in particular, the government itself, which actually conceals and keeps under lock and key much important evidence for the existence of extraterrestrial life and their appearance on the Earth, as well as forbids by laws the contact with extraterrestrial life forms. Another very objectionable factor is also that flying apparatuses are being built and tested in the USA by the military in an extremely secret manner, of which many outsiders nevertheless have knowledge and even evidence, because they have been able to observe and even film and photograph the flying apparatuses at all times of the day and night.
And these are flying apparatuses that have foreign forms and have propulsion systems and flight characteristics that are not inherent to any conventional aircraft. But why are you talking about this now? We were not allowed to do that before.
This secrecy is also taken away from us with our withdrawal. I can now also say that various so-called UFO observations that have been made in many countries of the Earth during the last 4 decades can also be traced back in several forms to such flying apparatuses of terrestrial origin, which, however, do not only relate to America, but also to other countries of the Earth. The actual reason that we are allowed to talk about this in our withdrawal is that all these things have been an open secret in certain circles for a long time, and therefore we do not release anything of knowledge that would still have to be regarded as a secret. As is the case, for example, with actual government and military secrets in which we are not allowed to interfere nor disclose. What we are doing here is simply a confirmation of certain things and incidents that can no longer be regarded as real secrets.
In various countries on the Earth, flying apparatuses are being developed which, due to their construction method, which is different from that based on airplanes, appear foreign and extraterrestrial, and indeed with quite good success. The forms of flying apparatuses range from the beamship forms that you know of, to triangular forms and so on and so forth. And the fact that these flying apparatuses are then regarded by observers as UFOs, that is to say, as spaceships, or simply as extraterrestrial flying objects, is indeed probably only natural, not least also because they are noiseless or almost noiseless, and have flight characteristics which are foreign to the flight techniques known on the Earth, and contradict them. That is what you have explained in repetition. Better safe than sorry.
That is correct.
In my 23 pages, I forgot to mention something else. Namely, that Earth humans were actually a single race in Hennick's primeval times, out of which further races formed through climatic changes, atmospheric changes and secretions, resulting in new lines. These then intermingled with each other, creating new breeds again. Thus, in the course of time, both the skin colors of humans and their external appearance changed, always in adaptation to the new environment and the new living conditions, etc. Of course, this also resulted in genetic changes, apart from genetic manipulation. These, however, were not such that the origin and basic connection of the fact that all human beings on the Earth originated from a single ancestral tribe would no longer be apparent. When, about 190,000 years ago, the human beings of the Lyra regions, etc., settled on the Earth with the former immigrants and the former humans of the world, it would be impossible to see the origin and the basic connection between them. Their descendants joined again immediately, and when the peoples separated again in bigger surges and the most different areas of the Earth were repopulated, new changes occurred in the skin color as well as in the external appearance and in the genes, whereby nevertheless also this time the ancestral strain was preserved, whereby still today it can be proven genetically that the terrestrial humans originated from a single primeval race.
You actually did not mention this in your report.
Something else. I thought, since we have to redesign and correct the prophecies, that we could include the 23 pages in them as well. It is 1 or 2 prophecies, and the rest are predictions. What do you think?
It might be right for you to integrate everything into the new book as a whole.
It will certainly be like that again, that certain people will raise an uproar against it, but that does not bother us anymore. We are used to such things. On the other hand, it is like this. If you want to be heard, you have to give offense, and if you want to give offense, you have to repeat the same things several times. It is only by offending that people become aware of one or more of the facts presented, either because it makes them feel attacked or because it bothers them that they have to hear the same facts twice or 3 times. This is the only way to make humans think, whether in peaceful or angry form, it does not matter. Only the effect is important, namely the fact that humans feel attacked in one way or another, and therefore think and react. But now something else. Recently I came across the fact that although we have spoken about xenophobia and racial hatred in our little pamphlets, but we have never really dealt with it and have not done any writing on the subject. That is what we want to do in the future, for which I have created a blurb together with Bernadette. Here, these are the ones. What do you think of them? These here are already in the print shop, and these 3 here I want to have ready next week.
They are very beautiful, and they also say a lot in relation to the individual topics mentioned. I like them very much. It would be a pleasure if you would leave me about 3 of each of them, even of those which are already in your possession. I would like to create a collection of them. Quetzal still has some Swiss money in his possession from when you bought us various things. I would like to give you this money as a contribution to the expenses for printing these stickers. It might be about 500 francs.
Of course, you can have as many pamphlets as you want. And we gladly accept the money, of course. I thank you on behalf of the whole group.
Please also pay my thanks and greetings to them, but also to all the groups in California, Sweden, Toronto and Japan, as well as to all friends of the mission, and of course to all passive group members, etc. I should also indicate these thanks and greetings on behalf of my daughters Simyase and Pleja. Then also from Asket and Nera, as well as from Manara, Isodus, Taljda, and of course from Quetzal and all others who know you through photos and TV shows at our center, or who encountered both core group members and passive group members during visits to the center, even if the people concerned rarely noticed anything or nothing at all about us being in their vicinity. Thanks and greetings, but I should also indicate the same from many who only know you from hearsay.
Thank you. Then I would like to ask you about what is going on with Titan.
It is not the time yet, because the USA will send a probe to Titan only in 3 years, and it will reach the moon only in the first days of January 2005.
And will the probe land on the moon?
Yes, that will be the case, because the mission will succeed.
Then the astronomers, etc., will experience a huge surprise when they discover that the moon has a solid, mountainous surface. They assume that the moon's surface is liquid or something. They have no idea about mountains and valleys as well as lakes and streams or rivers.
You will be right about the surprise.
But I am curious about that.
You should keep quiet about that in public, because you would only be unnecessarily ridiculed if you said something. So your knowledge should continue to be for group members only.
Whatever you say. When do you think we can print the contact reports as a book?
That will be very soon, because I have planned that we two can start the correction work together with Bernadette in the year 2000, after which the contact talks will appear in very quick succession in real book form. It can be assumed that the first work will be published in 2002. The books will be very valuable contemporary documents in the future.
Fine and good, but where should we get the money to print the books?
Let this be my concern, because it is already ensured that the financial means for these books will be available, as well as for various other works on your part. You can be reassured, however, because we do not exert any influence on any persons to obtain the necessary financial means. Because responsible passive group members will take the necessary steps of their own will and discretion to finance everything.
This is news.
About which you should be silent as well.
I will stick to that, of course.
For a number of reasons, that is very advisable.
Why do you think?
There are various malevolent elements all around who want to bring harm out of hatred and envy, and could do so in the aforementioned regard if they were to learn about it. Unfortunately, your wife also belongs to these evildoers.
You really mean that?
You know well enough that it is so.
She would betray me openly, not secretly. Then silence is better.
That is right. That is what I wanted to talk about. But if you think that this is really what you just said, then it is probably better to be silent.
That should actually be the case. So let us talk about something else. For some time now, the journals and newspapers have been full of memories of the war crimes committed by the Nazis in Germany. Radio and television also know nothing better to do than to foment the memories of them by all means, as do the Jewish associations and federations, etc. in particular. In my opinion, this action is just as criminal and even felonious as the constant anti-war propaganda in the form of so-called anti-war films, etc., as well as the crimes in racist and tormenting form, which are highly played by the public media. It is my personal view that all those who shout in anti- and contraform against the torture and death penalty, against concentration camps, crimes and wars are shown in the form of horrific and gruesome pictures in newspapers and journals, as well as on television and cinema, etc. For example, how people are massacred, tortured, and murdered, how cemeteries are desecrated and houses are built, etc., from my knowledge of the human psychological reaction. They would otherwise realize that exactly the opposite is achieved through their actions, because so many misguided and misconceiving people feel attracted by this alleged anti-propaganda in the form to act themselves as shown by the feeble-minded anti-propaganda, because it is precisely this that triggers the opposite effect, whereby neo-Nazism and right-wing extremism gain even more ground. From a psychological point of view, this is a logical process, but one that is not recognized by those responsible for this madness anti-propaganda, because they lack both knowledge of human nature and knowledge of psychology. Anti-war films, anti-concentration camp films, anti-drug films, anti-torture and death penalty films, etc., which illustrate the crimes in figurative terms as well as descriptions, which fantastically present such crimes to the readers through the written word, produce exactly the opposite of what they actually should. The memories evoked by such nonsense incite many to the same cruel act, as was the case with those who committed these atrocities, who also fell into this madness through propaganda. If it is to be tackled against all events and still existing evils, then this must never happen in this idiotic form, but only by demonstrating the existing evils of the present and the consequences for the future threatening from it. Memories, however, of the past, according to the idiotic motto, we must never forget Auschwitz, or we must not forget the abominations of the past, etc., are completely out of place and dangerous, because they again spur on the same evils and atrocities. So this nonsense must be stopped if neo-Nazism and extreme right-wing radicalism are not to be further stirred up. Only a ban against the anti-nonsense of this form can bring healing. And a fight against all that which is bad and evil can only be crowned with success if the means of war are kept in a form that does not revel in memories, as has been done so far, but which in the present form are harmful and show evil and also clarify the consequences arising from it and what is to be expected. That is my opinion, on which I would like to hear your opinion.
This is in complete agreement with yours. There are no further explanations to be given, except perhaps that this fact can only be recognized by really responsible, clear, and reasonable thinking human beings. Not even a psychological education is necessary for this, because pure reason reveals the fact of your interpretation.
Of course, that is what I want to have said. But let us just say, in Japan, there was a severe earthquake around the middle of last month that cost more than 5,000 dead and caused tremendous damage, much worse than the last major quake in California, where looting took place and people behaved as if they had never learned decency and reverence, as was the case elsewhere, such as in Mexico and South American states, etc., where all order collapsed. This is in stark contrast to Japan, where such things were practically non-existent, and the humans took everything in their stride with truly admirable composure. Chaos and all the other evils did not exist there, as was the case in other countries, and especially in America, where an appropriate version would also have been in order. But this was just as lacking as a certain culture. In Japan, a criminal organization even helped the population by distributing food, etc. This alone shows what real culture and honor, what composure and what respect is in the Japanese. Politeness and friendship is not just an empty phrase with them, as for example with the Americans, who so quickly call themselves friends. But for them, this word is only a phrase of use, behind which only sound and smoke can be found, or perhaps not as much as we have all had to find out again and again in the last 20 years. Of course, there are other Americans in this respect too, and that is quite clear, namely, those who are real friends and real humans for whom friendship really means something valuable. I also have such friends in America, but unfortunately, they are only a few, but they are real, honest, and good friends.
I know. The earthquake has brought great hardship and much misery and grief over Japan and over the Japanese, as well as enormous destruction. Send all our condolences and our deep respect to the humans there for their conduct during this difficult time.
That I happily do, because I also feel high regard and respect for them. Is there anything that can be done against earthquakes?
The rule also applies, on all our Federation worlds, that hardly anything can be done against heavy earthquakes in a reasonable form. If high buildings, etc., are erected, which is why only small buildings are usual everywhere and largely secured against heavy shocks. Also, our worlds live and are shaken by earthquakes, but we behave accordingly in the construction of the buildings and in their protection against the shaking of the planets.
You also have houses or buildings that are not composed of small pieces, such as stones or concrete slabs, etc., because your buildings are made of plastics and also of a single piece, seamlessly, as I have seen. In addition, they are on spring systems, which are made as suspended bodies.
That is correct, but these are only two of the methods used as vibration protections.
I did not say that I knew everything. I was just talking about what I saw during my visit. The earthquake was also not the only shock that was on the Earth in January. In Europe, including Switzerland, there were huge storms and floods that caused enormous damage.
This will continue to be the case. Because these evils will continue to increase worldwide, so many storms, hurricanes, typhoons and hurricanes, etc., as well as floods, droughts, and fires will cause enormous damage everywhere on the Earth and will also cause many deaths. Also, earthquakes belong to this, which will bring still very much damage and suffering, as this will also be the case with wars as well as with religious sectarianism, by which still many sectarian dramas are to be expected. Criminality and petty crime are also becoming more and more prevalent, as are turmoil in the world and in politics, as well as among the military. Islamic fundamentalism will also degenerate more and more, as will diseases and epidemics among the Earth's population. Of course, there will not always be a high for all evils, because everything swings in ups and downs. At one time, the evil will be more, and at another time less, but continuously rising. But this is the fault of the Earth humans, because through the increasing overpopulation, they also push forward the increase of all evils. But we really should not have to talk about this anymore, because in all the years of our contacts, everything necessary has been said about this, unfortunately uselessly, because the total humanity and above all the responsible persons of the governments and military did not care about it. Although you, as well as the whole group, tried to make everything known with a lot of effort and costs.
We have already had successes, because many humans have taken up our words and carried them on, and have also begun to live and act according to our statements and proposals.
This is of course true, but I spoke of the majority of the earthly humanity and the majority of those responsible. Of course, the minority is important here, because it is they who lead the great effort in this struggle. But the thanks for them will be small, even if it is they who ultimately lay the foundation for all the changes for the better with you and your group in the first place.
Thanks for the flowers.
Now that we are withdrawing from the Earth, I would like to come back to the fact that neither we Pleiaren nor any of our Federation's allies maintain contacts with any humans on the Earth, neither in physical nor telepathic form. Such contacts have also never existed. If we disregard those 5 persons whose identity you know, however, and who, on the other hand, died years ago, and who never came to the public with their knowledge. However, what is to be mentioned from our side are the impulse contacts which we cultivated with scientists, etc. of Earth, and which we also continue by means of suitable apparatuses, of which, however, none of the persons concerned knows and will never know anything. These impulse contacts are solely evolutionary and trend-setting, which means that research is carried out and inventions made as well as insights gained and literary works created in a trend-setting form. That is to say, science fiction works that are often also processed into films. In physical and telepathic form, you are thus the only person on the earth who is in contact with us and has ever been in contact, if we disregard those whom you knew and who died.
And how about other extraterrestrial intelligences now? Do any of them have contacts with Earth humans today? I mean private individuals and the like who have nothing to do with governments and the military, which you are not allowed to talk about.
This question can clearly be answered with no, because neither those three groups who are permanently or very frequently on the earth maintain any contacts with people of private or religious form on the earth, which can be said with absolute certainty and factuality, nor those several extraterrestrial visitors who come to the earth for excursions or expeditions or for any other reasons. The exam contacts are excluded thereby, because there is no talk of it, because these are not based on a mutual contacting.
So there are no contacts between private Earth humans and extraterrestrials. And as you said, there are also no religious contacts between Earth humans and extraterrestrials, which means that these stigmatized and their patron Siragusa are nothing else than wheelers and dealers. This stigmatized one, BG he calls himself, even wanted to come to me and bring me a very important message from Our Lady and from God the Father personally. For almost a week, he had us harassed by third parties speaking different languages in order to be able to arrange a meeting with me. In fact, he and his followers believe that his stigmata are a sign of God. And in truth, as with all stigmatized stigmata, they arise only from a religious insanity and fanaticism, through a psychogenic effect triggered by religious sectarianism, as was the case with the first known stigmatized Francis of Assisi and with several hundred others.
This is all absolutely correct. The incident about the telephone harassment of followers of the delusional fanatic BG is known to me from the control apparatus. Religious sectarian fanaticism apparently knows no boundaries among Earth humans.
Another question concerning the Pleiades. You said earlier that they are still very young. But are there not any habitable planets there after all?
No, there are indeed planetary formations around a few Pleiades, but these are still in a very young state, as are the stars themselves, which is only natural, because if there are young stars, then the planets cannot be old either. On the few Pleiades planets, however, no life exists yet, and it is also not debatable whether life will develop there one day, because it will not, because the stars will disappear again very quickly.
Thank you. Then one more question. Michael Hesseman used as a cover picture for his book Geheimsache UFO, a shot showing an F-14 interceptor of the U.S. Air Force with a UFO over Puerto Rico, taken by a certain Amaury Rivera. Are you aware of this?
Certainly. This is undoubtedly a trick shot with models suspended from fisher silk. We got to the bottom of this, as we likewise did with Ed Walters, whose photos are also trick shots. Michael Hesseman is an enthusiastic ufologist and in this form extremely correct, but unfortunately sometimes also gullible. He is unusually easily tricked and deceived, and believes that much of the unexplainable is of extraterrestrial origin, which, however, is not true, as our exact investigations have shown. He himself is not a purely Earth-created one, which may also be the reason for why he is so enthusiastic about UFOs and supports the case so strongly, but through which he also lets himself be easily deceived.
But because of the falsified photos, there are many more pictures that have been taken in recent years by observers of UFOs that are real. According to your own statements, these include photos by police and military personnel.
That is correct. because during the last decades, different extraterrestrial intelligences have been seen on the Earth with their flying machines, which could then also be filmed and photographed. The film and photo material of UFOs made in all the years worldwide, and especially in America and South America, as well as in England, etc., does not always show extraterrestrial flying objects, but also such strangely working flying machines, which are manufactured for several decades by terrestrial humans on the Earth, as well as flying bodies, which come from the terrestrial future, or which are known as bioorganic flying bodies with us, which are the so-called dimension changers, life forms, which penetrate from another dimension into the terrestrial airspace.
Carlos Diaz, an alleged contact person. What can we make of him?
You ask an illogical question, because I already explained that no humans on the Earth have any contact with extraterrestrial intelligences. Therefore, he's a deceiver.
Then I want to ask something else. Are you familiar with Area 51 and the Roswell, New Mexico incident in 1947? Then a UFO crash in Aztec, New Mexico, similar to the one in Roswell. But a year later, then a third crash at the Mexican border in 1949 or 1950, and further that the Americans in Area 51 are supposed to hold various bodies of aliens, as well as a living alien there.
I have stated on several occasions that these things are covered by my duty of confidentiality because they fall under the jurisdiction of the government, the military, and state security. So I am not allowed to talk about this officially, but only in confidence with you, in private, as you like to say. On the other hand, such knowledge would be dangerous for you, if you officially knew about it. Let us leave everything related to this as it is.
All right, it was just a last try. Then again to Michael Heseman. What do you think of him?
He is a very valuable man for the spreading of the truth in relation to our entire mission and beyond. He is often deceived by lies and deception, as well as dizziness and charlatanism. But he is extremely courageous to spread the real truth, not like those who instead bring a lot of nonsense, as it appears in many books and magazines.
You also express my opinion with it.
He is really a man to whom one can give the necessary confidence for the spreading of the mission, for he has the courage to work for the cause in reality.
I know, but this factor is not accepted by certain know-it-alls. But what about contacts to extraterrestrials in the future? May we talk about them now?
Unfortunately, this is still not allowed, but nevertheless, I or you may reveal so much that something new will happen in the near future.
You mean the fact that the time is approaching when official contacts with extraterrestrials will take place?
Of course, I informed you about that. In the time to come, even farther away, a lot will happen and change with regard to alien aircraft and their crews, but also with regard to earthly, mysterious, and strange-looking flying machines. Also, contacts with extraterrestrials are to be expected, which will, however, be of a completely different nature than all previous lying, swindling, and deceitful wannabe contactees these represented with all their religious sectarian nonsense, etc. Also, new discoveries of immense importance are announced, which are made both on the Earth and outside these on the Moon and Mars, etc., as you have already written and explained in detail in the 23 report pages, without naming the periods of the arrival of the individual events.
It would probably be wrong to name the years, or even the exact dates of days and months, etc.
I already said that you did the right thing. But in terms of accuracy, I would like to explain something that is not particularly pleasing. The longer the more I have found out over the years that only a few core group members have mastered writing, to such an extent that they are able to produce writings of their own composition and books of their own composition from out of their own responsibility and with their own skills. With the male group members, it is particularly bad in this respect. if I refrain from Guido's work, while it looks more pleasing with different female group members. When I look at what is currently being written as future books and writings, I find it frightening in terms of the corrections that will be required and in terms of the typesetting and corrections needed to formulate them correctly.
Our people are not writers, and they often cannot write themselves.
Among the male group members, however, there are at least 3 who believe that their literary outpourings are of unique quality. However, if their works are to be published, they must be thoroughly revised, corrected and rectified, and stylistically and syntactically shaped and made legible.
Beautiful presence. But tell me, how do you know the term proofread?
This is a very old and long since disappeared term of the old German language, which says that something is or must be corrected.
I know that too, my friend, because I always use this term.
It is a word value that says briefly and concisely what it means.
I'm glad that I am no longer the only one who knows and uses this term. But today, apparently, nobody really knows it anymore. Even in clever books, nothing can be found about it, just as if the term had never existed.
But it is contained in our old records of the German language.
But that does not help me here. And our great writers will be pleased with your words.
It would be pointless if I had not talked about it, because then the mistakes would not be recognized. On the other hand, praise would be a lie, and such things are alien to us. The works produced in the above form cannot really be published until they have been thoroughly revised.
And who should do this revision?
You will not be able to find time for that. On the other hand, you would be predestined for it. But you still cannot be considered. For my part, I would suggest Marianne or Christina if they were willing, which would take a lot of time and restrict their freedom. Although there are a few other members in the core group who could perform this task, there is also a need of time for them. So we have to ignore this topic for the time being and see what we can do in the future.
Nice prospects. But just tell me how far your research and experiments have advanced with the latest travel and transport technology.
It is all still full of failures, and it will take quite some time before everything really works properly. There have also been unexpected new problems again. But if everything works perfectly, then we will be able to visit you more often, because we do not have to get to Earth and you in an awkward manner anymore, but can do this without all the loss of time and so on. Also, the promised visit to my daughter Sim Yase has not been forgotten.
Glad to hear it. I'm curious when that will finally be.
As it looks, according to your terms, this may take a little longer, maybe 2 to 3 years.
Man, I am already old and rickety. Another question about earthly UFOs. You say you cannot talk about it? But on the other hand, there are a lot of human beings on our planet who can talk openly about it, and even provide photographic and cinematic evidence about these flying machines. Even insiders talk openly about these things today and reveal secrets.
That is probably true, but they are not in my place. I must abide by our directives, which state that I must not talk about it, because we must not interfere in any earthly matters other than how we are in contact with you and provide information, etc.
Of course, I could have thought of that myself. Ah, yes. But what will it be like in the future if I have questions that I would like you to answer?
It has already been taken care of that when important matters arise, that we then get in contact with you in telepathic form. You do not have to make much of an effort to reach us, because the control apparatus that remains above the center is aligned and programmed in such a manner that it picks up your telepathic impulses and then transmits a signal to me in many times the speed of light-fast form, after which I then contact you, which I, on my part, will also do if I have important information or instructions, etc. for you or the groups. So you do not have to make a lot of effort when you call me, so you do not have to bother for hours when I am not available. A simple telepathic call in simple form is enough to be registered by the control apparatus, whose signal is then sent out until I receive and confirm it. My telepathic contact with you then takes place as quickly as possible, in the normal way of spirit telepathy.
Thank you for your efforts. But I will only call you when something really urgent comes up.
For which I will be grateful. It should also be that no questions are discussed that fall into the interests of the group members or other persons. In the future, you should really be on your own and fathom, direct, and handle everything yourself. In the future, only questions that are either of mission interest in the narrower and wider context can be answered, as well as questions that demonstrably arise only from your own interest in any regard.
Your world monitoring control discs, what about them? Do they remain stationed around the world?
All these control apparatuses have already been removed, so only the one intended for the center still exists. But it is no larger than 7 millimeters in diameter and 3.2 millimeters in thickness.
And that includes all the monitoring electronics as well as the signal transmitter?
And even much more that you would not dream of, as you like to say. The control apparatus also contains transmitters and receivers and associated image transmission equipment, which transmit everything at multiple speeds of light to a control point near our dimensional passage at a star far beyond the Pleiades cluster, in order to reach our space-time structure and thus our dimension from there through a dimensional transmitter. For security reasons, I am unfortunately not allowed to explain this anymore.
You mean probably for safety reasons in relation to other space-traveling intelligences?
Certainly. More detailed information would be dangerous for us.
You are once again tight-lipped. My friend, you mean probably that certain Earth visitors of other worlds outside of our solar system could get hold of your information and find the way into your dimension?
That is the meaning of my words, yes. At least from a group of such intelligences, we know that they are capable of changing dimensions in such a kind and wise that they could reach our dimension, which would be unpleasant.
I did not know that. Do these intelligences also come to the Earth?
That is the case, yes.
Then your concerns are all the more understandable. Are we talking about those who...
They come only sporadically to the Earth.
In the spiritual teaching, I started with the extensive work of dream interpretation, and already explained that dream symbols in the whole universe have the same value or the same interpretation for human life forms. For this, it is of course always assumed that on other worlds, the same symbols appear to the human beings there as on our Earth. Of course, this is not always the case, because many other prerequisites are given on alien worlds. For example, in the animal world and in technology as well as in landscapes and so on and so forth, whereby other symbols are also given in this respect. But if we now assume that ravens or snakes, etc., also exist on other worlds, then these have the same value in symbolic form as here on the Earth. Stars, fire, water, air, volcanoes, and tens of thousands of other things exist in the entire universe, and these have the same values and interpretations as dream symbols, as is the case on the Earth. Symbols that do not exist on the Earth due to the other animal worlds, environment, technology, music and landscapes as well as plant worlds, etc., etc., but exist on other worlds would have the same values on the Earth or elsewhere, if the corresponding prerequisites for them were also given here. Does this also apply to other universes? I think that this cannot be any different.
Your assumption is absolutely correct.
Then I have a question about the succession of the presidency, the vice presidency, the secretary and treasurer, as well as all board members and my succession. This question will soon become topical, and you said just a while ago that you would give instructions in this regard. How should the new elections be conducted?
For the succession of your person there are no questions, as you yourself know very well, because Atlant Platon Socrates Bieri follows in your footsteps. It has been so determined since time immemorial. Such a provision also exists for the next presidency, to which Andreas Schuberger will be obligated in corresponding provision. Christian Friener will take over the vice presidency. For the office of the secretary, which is exercised by Bernadette, and for the office of the treasurer, which lies in Eva's area, no change results for the next election, because the two have designated themselves each for 2 election periods for it. This is also not the case with their office as board members. While the other board members must be newly elected, although it may be possible and given that existing board members can be elected for a further 20-year period.
And do you know when the new elections must take place?
Of course. The date will be 3rd October 1998. The second elections, which we must assume, took place on Saturday, the 7th of October 1978, by a normal General Assembly, because Herbert Runkle had to be removed from his office as President-Chairman due to complete unsuitability, who on Saturday, the 21st of April 1979, was then also expelled from the core group at a third weekend meeting. This refers only to the presidency and the chairperson. Because the other offices were already occupied on the 17th of June 1978, but confirmed again on the 7th of October, which unfortunately was not recorded in writing. Only the new presidential election was recorded at that time. For the new elections, my recommendation would therefore be that all necessary new elections or re-elections of office should be held at the same time. Since there are only about 312 months between one date and the other, so it would be appropriate to hold all new elections on the 3rd of October 1998. With regard to these new elections, we reserve the right to make some suggestions for changes that we consider necessary.
But of course, we will be glad for your indications.
For your part, you are in charge for the time of your life, but it would be appropriate for you to slowly teach your successor leadership.
I have thought about that, but maybe a lot will change, and maybe someone else will take the lead. You never know, because many things happen again and again that are not intended and often throw everything overboard.
That is of course true, and that is why we cannot say what the future will bring in this respect either. But like you, we also hope that everything will turn out as it is intended.
Easily said, but we really hope so. By the way, Heidi and Bob in San Diego and all the members of their group around them are always very active, diligent, and successful. A real joy.
That is well known to me. Pay them all my special regards and esteem because they are really very diligent and successful through Heidi's mission activity. So far, an absolute exception in America in terms of honesty and real effort as well as respect for the mission, you and us. When I think of all the evil machinations, deceptions, and exploitations against you that have arisen through Americans, I would like to be tempted to say that these humans of this small group around Adelheid, that is to say Heidi and Bob and these themselves, belong to those few who have to be searched for very, very long in order to find them. As you once said as a parable, a few healthy, germinating grains in a vast desert. A saying I have not forgotten again.
I said that once. That is true. But it was a long time ago. But it does apply to Heidi and Bob and the small group that has gathered around them. Also the Toronto group, and the Figu Japan, and the few people in Sweden are doing quite well, even if there are still some problems in Canada and Japan. But it is really no comparison to Heidi and Bob's group.
It is really time to pay them respect.
You said it, my friend. I would like to ask you about meditation in the future. If you are not here anymore, does that mean that you will no longer be involved?
No, it remains the same as it was before. There will be no changes in this regard. Everything will be the same as before.
That is good. Then we are really not alone. May I now ask you a question about the epidemics that threaten our world?
Bring up your question.
You said that new diseases will appear and spread all over the world. When will the beginning be?
The evil has already begun with the first types of epidemics, but as usual, everything is concealed.
How could it be otherwise? Our glorious science also claims that certain diseases cannot break through the species barrier, such as BSE, mad cow disease, and AIDS. In both cases, however, this has already happened, and for a long time, but the narrow-minded scientists still claim delusionally and idiotically that this is not possible.
What you say is absolutely correct. Both animal and human pathogens are capable of breaking through and mutating through the species barrier, allowing other species to be attacked by the same disease as is present in the diseased life form. Thus, pathogens can spread from certain animals to other animal species, as well as to humans, while pathogens of human diseases can spread to animals as well. As a result of the species change, the disease patterns naturally change as well, although the pathogens also mutate and adapt to the different life form. These are facts which, however, are denied by the criminal and criminal, irresponsible responsible persons, because on the one hand, they are really megalomaniac and narrow-minded, as you say, and on the other hand, still so limited in their knowledge that they cannot see or fathom the real connections. But now, friend Edward, we should turn to other things because there is still a lot to discuss for us.
Of course, I do not have any more questions.